La da 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 dee da 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 dee da hocus pocus. La da 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 dee da 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 dee da 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 abracadabra.
Hello and welcome to Fulton Street Beats. That was a fun little intro. So this is a zany, little itty bitty pink girl's guitar from Amazon, and it weighs less than 3 pounds with a strap. It has an action that's almost non-adjustable. It has a horrendous neck and very short little scale, as you can see. But it sounded good, right? Let's talk about a subject that pisses off a lot of people. And if you are one of those people that gets pissed off about tone woods, I would suggest you don't watch this video. Anyhow, tone woods. What's this made out of? If I had to guess, I'm going to say pine. But why does it sound good? Well, there is tone to guitars, and when you talk about tone to a guitar, tone is the resonance that the guitar will vibrate at. And depending on electronics, this is where we run into a lot of debate, the hotter the electronics, the more that tone that wood vibrates at, and how the guitar is made and how that tone travels through that surface, be it the bridge, the neck, the body, what have you, even the parts that compose the electronic guitar, such as the pickups and everything else. The way the vibration carries through affects tone. And it affects tone mostly when it's unplugged. That's why a lot of people will strum their guitars and say, oh, wow, that sounds beautiful. Listen to that tone of that guitar with it unplugged. And that is true. That is very true. I have some guitars that sound very good unplugged. Well, that's fine for a guitar that you play unplugged, such as an acoustic or even a semi-hollow. But as far as an electric guitar with a solid body, it makes very little difference, if any, when you start looking at the electronics and, well, the most obvious, what you're running through. So we just did that little demo, and I recorded that with this mic through the cell phone, the open air cell phone. So I assure you, it sounds even better if I would have recorded it to the DAW and then transmitted it to you through YouTube that way. But I wanted to give you the worst kind of quality that I could with a non-tone wood. It's still got tone. A non-tone wood guitar. But why did it sound halfway decent? Well, for one, I set up the guitar the best that I could. I put some tuners on it that hold better than what came on it. And most of all, well, it's got 9 to 42 slinkies on it with a Wilkinson pickup and just a cheap pot. It's factory electronics with exception of the one single coil pickup. So what was doing it? Why was it crunchy? Why did it sound metally? Well, one is the pickup, the way it picks up. It's got a decent pickup. And number two is the electronics I'm running through externally, such as the Roots amp. The plug-in that I'm using. And that goes the same for any amp. I could be running a Fender. I could be running my Marshall. Anything I want to run, that tone wood goes away. It's what this is producing and how this is transmitting into what is producing the actual sound. So this is going to pick up frequency from the strings mostly. Yes, tone does transfer slightly, but you're not going to ever notice it. And I'll give you, for instance, let's put it this way. This sounded decent. And this is a shitty-ass, worst playing example guitar I could find that sounds decent because it's got a Wilkinson pickup in it. The Roots plug-in was doing all the work, and this pickup was doing all the work. Everything else was, keeping it in tune. Well, that's up to me and the tuners and what have you. I assure you it plays horrible. It's got horrible frets. I did touch them up, but horrible frets, horrible bridge. It's a guitar where you go back and you're going to have to tune it up again. It's just very unstable. The neck is almost warped on it. And like I said, it weighs nothing. I mean, it's finger light. It's nothing. But tone woods, what about them? What about your mahoganies? What about your ashes and your birches and your poplars? And what about that stuff? Well, mostly it's a gimmick to sell electronic guitars. I mean, don't get me wrong, mahogany is a great wood, and you should be upcharged for mahogany because it lasts. It's a nice hard wood, and it lasts longer than a lot of other woods. That's the main reason that you want one. But how many times do you hear regurgitated, the tone wood? Well, if you really want to talk tone woods, if you want to talk tone, your lighter woods will give you more resonance than, like, say, even mahogany. Poplar, birch, well, as a drum builder, I know this, they resonate better than your harder woods. Now we talk about warm tones and light tones, and your heavier woods, your mahoganies, your things of that nature will give you a warmer tone, if you want to consider it warmer, but not once it's plugged in. And this is the big misconception that's been proven over and over again. I forget what video it was, but a guy literally ran guitar strings across open air from a bench to another bench, I believe it was, and placed the pickups in the proper height underneath, and it didn't make any different sound. It was the pickup with nothing underneath it. There was no guitar body, but it sounded like there was a guitar body. At least that's our belief, that the body makes that tone. And like I said, it's very little. Now, there's some slight exceptions to that rule, because remember, it does a little bit. And that exception is your acoustic electric guitars. But they have a different style pickup, and they produce a resonance inside of the guitar. But how it sounds externally, we think that translates to the electronically part, and it doesn't. That pickup is still doing the job in that acoustic guitar, but it's picking up the resonance internally and transmitting through what amp you're running. Again, electronics. So that's why you've run into guitars that may have a beautiful tone that is an acoustic guitar, acoustic electric, and then you plug it in and you're not really impressed with the tone now. Now, why is that? If it really makes a difference, why is that? Well, because for once the resonance of that guitar is open air source, like this is open air. But once plugged in, you're not getting that beautiful sound because, well, the quality of electronics is not that good. And it's all about the electronics that you're running. Gibson makes some excellent pickups, don't they? If you guys want to know where the sound of a Gibson comes in, it's the pickups in. Case in point. This was an experiment that I did a while back. You see this? These are 2 Gibson PAFs. And this was in a gem-style guitar. They came out of a Les Paul. But we had to do the wiring and everything, the switch and everything else because we wanted to keep it apples for apples. This gem sounded just like a Les Paul when we got done. And the same holds true for the Les Paul. Now the Les Paul has some DiMarzios in it, and guess what? It sounds like a gem. Without the whammy bar, of course. But the electronics were doing the work. And you can record them both in either way, and they sound like each other. Electronics. So if you like the sound of a certain pickup, and I'll give you another for instance, if you go back into the day with Gibson, well, when their pickups were hand wound. It was once you found a guitar that you liked, you kind of held on to it because they all sounded different. That's because the windings weren't the same on all of the pickups. Well, there was errors. They could be errors. They all had a different tonal response to what you were plugging them into. And that's why. And now they've become more uniform across the board. Now the psychosomatic part comes in when you pick up the guitar and you play it and you say, oh my God, I love it. It sounds so good. Well, half of you loving the sound of that guitar is the way it plays, the way it feels. And you subconsciously incorporate that into how it sounds. But there is a line. So, case in point, this is a shitty playing guitar. It's horrible to play. And in my mind, it sounds, well, horrible. But it's not. It sounds actually decent. It's just the playability makes it not enjoyable. Although I did enjoy that part because it was just fun to do. But it's not an enjoyable guitar to play. You're cramped. Everything is, like I said, the fretboard's warped, uneven frets. It's hard to get any type of decent action on this thing where it even works. I don't know. It's horrible. I can't keep it in tune. But while it works, it sounds good. If you can keep it in tune, it sounds decent. It's not a guitar you'd even recommend to a little kid. This is for a 3-year-old, by the way. Recommended for a 3-year-old. If you want to frustrate a child, this is what you want to give them. Because it literally has to be tuned quarter way through any song, even with the good strings. And strings are a very important part of that vibration also. And how those strings transfer over through the... Because remember, we're talking about frequencies. But the first thing to go away with a frequency and transferring over to your amp, the very first thing to go away through that frequency is what the material of the guitar is made of. Not that it doesn't make any difference, because it does. It's just so minimal, unless you're Superman hearing, that you're not going to notice it. Now, buy whatever floats your boat. I recommend good woods for sure. They last longer. They're not as prone to warpage. They're not as prone to cracking. But when you read a guitar listing and it says this is made of this wood for incredible tone, well, that's unplugged. You're not going to see it plugged in. And if whether you agree with me or not, well, that's up to you, but there is science behind it and there is fact behind it. Yes, there's minimal effect. And I hope that clears up a little bit about tone woods. And if you really want a tone wood, well, you want to go with tone woods that are actual tone woods, such as, well, birch and poplar. They're actual tone woods, spruce, resonant woods. That's the word we should be using, resonant woods. And I make flat panel speakers and as a hobby. And flat panel speakers are always made out of a resonant type of birch or what have you, because they vibrate better. They hold their tone better. So that's how we do that. All right, guys, thanks for watching Fulton Street Beats. If you could hit that like button, share, and subscribe. And remember, it's rock and roll that makes the world go round, baby.